Today's podcast is sponsored by Grappa Restaurant, 22 Railroad Avenue, Warwick, New York. We have outdoor seating, indoor seating, upstairs bar, fantastic food and ambience. Come join us, Grappa Restaurant.
Hey, I'm back. Catch me on the run. I'm back in Cuba. But before I get back to Cuba, hit the click button, hit the likes, subscribe. Come find me on my Instagram, John Alite. Find me on my Facebook, and let's dive into it again. So I'm back in Cuba. And you know, the amazing thing for people that have never been there is it's an extreme culture of closeness, family. You know, when I went back to Cuba, your mind's racing because everybody's looking for me. The FBI, Interpol, local police, state police. Uh, I'm on news outlets, and I'm waiting to see when that indictment comes down. I need to get passports, and I need to get other identifications so I can keep moving on the low and be safe. And I end up in an area called Miramar. Miramar is in Havana. For the people that are from Cuba or have like Pitbull, I love listening to him because he talks against communism the way he does. Being Cuban and being successful in this country, he appreciates what this country has to offer. But as I'm walking in the streets of Miramar, I start feeling that I'm at home because I'm getting used to being there all the time. And you're getting comfortable. And it's one thing about, human beings. As good a situation or bad as a situation, you adapt. You may think you're not going to adapt, but you do adapt. And I started adapting to Miramar. Miramar, for the people who know, is behind the aquarium in Havana. And it's cobblestone roads. And you just got to picture cobblestone roads, kids playing all over the park with their families because there's not a lot of money. So there's something to be said about not having money and having the qualities of the way we grew up. When we grew up with money didn't mean as much. It was more love and family and communities and friendships and parties in the street at night. They throw a boombox outside, a radio. They get a couple of cases of beer. They dance. They drink. Everybody's friendly with each other. Everybody supports each other. So there's a lot to be said about it's really weird because it's like this is 2003 about when I'm back in Cuba, and it's constantly in the back of my mind. Who's following me? Who's watching me? Will they kidnap me off the streets and bring me back to the United States because Cuba didn't work with the United States? So in one way, I'm safe, but I also know there's a lot of CIA and different people in Cuba. And I've heard of different cases where they picked them up right off the street, drove them to Guantanamo Bay, and flew them right back out to the United States, just kidnapped them. So I was always leery of that. But as I'm walking in the streets and I'm looking at and I'm watching the kids playing fire hydrants with the water running, and everybody's with their family having picnics, and they don't have a ton of money, but yet they're having such a good life in different ways. And I remember, back in the late '60s, when I was a kid, and I'm thinking about, wow, I remember when we did this. We had no money. My father was a taxi driver. We'd all be in the park. There used to be, for the Albanians out there, there used to be a big picnic every year, the Albanian picnic in Boston. And anybody who was Albanian, we drive to Boston 4 or 5 hours, and we go to that picnic. And it was one of the best times of the year for us to get together with our community and go swimming and pack sandwiches. And it didn't cost a lot of money to do. Gas prices back in those days were very low. So even gas wasn't expensive. Tolls weren't expensive like now. Now you need a job just to pay a toll to get from one state to another and put gas in your car. And for people who don't have money, it's almost undoable. And if you do it, you could do it maybe once every 2 or 3 weeks or a month even, because you can't pay your bills otherwise. But when I'm walking around in Cuba and I'm seeing these kids and they're all laughing, they're hugging, and they're playing baseball, And football, meaning soccer, football. So that people don't know, if you travel in Europe a lot, like, we call soccer football, and I will use the terminology American football here. And I'm watching the kids play with their little brothers and sisters, and they're playing football and the fire hydrants. They're running through the fire hydrants, and they're giggling and they're laughing. And you see them walking with the little boxes of ice cream and ices for the kids. And they were like 10 cents and 15 cents and 25 cents. And at the same time, you see the old style cars that you would see in the United States in the 50s during the Happy days and Fonzie. And you're looking at some of the old cars that were beautiful that you're seeing on the streets. And it's almost like you just step back in time, you know, uh, 50 years, 40 years. And it was an incredible feeling when you think about it. Like I felt, although I'm not home and I'm not with my family, but I felt like I was home again because it makes you resonate the feeling of when you were a child and when things were simple and without all the craziness and the technology. And I'm walking through the street and I'm watching everybody play, and all of a sudden this motorcade is flying past me. I mean, going 100, 120 miles an hour on a cobblestone road with super stretch limos and Mercedes, and all of a sudden they stop dead. And for the people who don't know, on the corners in Cuba and booths is the military police with the Klitschnikov machine guns, and so they got all kinds of machine guns and they're in military outfits. And the streets are very, very safe in Cuba for the people who also don't know that. And everybody stops. And I'm looking like, why is everybody stopping? And you see them, and I ask somebody on the street, who is this? And one car after another, and you see armed guys getting out in black suits, and they got sunglasses out, and there's, I don't know, maybe a dozen or 2 dozen guys jumping out first. And I look at somebody, and he gives me the scratch of his chin, and he's rubbing his chin. And for the people who don't know, that's Castro. They would rub their beard instead of saying his name. He didn't like his name being said in public. So they would, out of fear and respect, depending on who you're talking to, uh, they would rub their chin. So it was Castro jumping out with his sons, his brother, and that's where the main square is, where he was going to do a town talk in front of the town of Miramar. And I was amazed. And back then, they didn't have the access to cameras like that, send the phones and all that. So I wish I had it where I could have took pictures. And I stopped, and the town's starting to fill up with people, and they're cheering like crazy for him. And people will say, I thought they don't like him. And there was a faction of people that did like him. There's a faction that don't like him. But no matter if you like him or you don't like him, they feared him. So they would clap and cheer for him regardless. Because if somebody got caught standing in that courtyard on the street in that area without clapping and cheering, it was a dangerous situation for him. So people would clap and cheer, and then they look at you and give you the eyes like, F him, but it's, the experience was incredible, actually. Whether you like somebody or not, it's history, and you're part of it now. You stand there and you're listening to him talk, and I'm not that fluent in Spanish, but enough to understand and catch some of what he says. And he was a good speaker, and he was motivationally good. He actually would get that crowd cheered up and moving and screaming, and everybody's Viva Cuba, and you're hearing everybody, and the kids have stopped playing, and they're taught at a young age to show a lot of respect for him. Even if some of them didn't like him, they still showed that respect for him, his regime, the fear factory of his regime, and what he said. He stayed probably a good half hour. And then as the crowd dispersed and he got into his caravan and took off, then all the mumbling and murmuring of people talking, and you would hear the different opinions. But they were very careful of who they said it to. They didn't just say it to anybody. And as I continued to walk, I lived in a mansion in Miramar with a very political family that I met through a friend of mine. And they were very good to me. And some of those houses that you live in were amazing, huge. I lived in probably, I guess it was about an 8 or 10,000 square foot home. Beautiful, beautiful structure. And you get some beautiful structures in Havana. And I went down, I used to go down to downtown Havana and walk. And if you see the old, they would throw the old shows, and, you can't afford them in this country to have such a show put on because it would be too costly. So they would have the showgirls dancing and the big bands and incredible shows at the Flamingo and different areas that I went to. And I would go see these shows on a regular basis on the weekend. And I used to think about, God, my father would love this because that was his era. And the music and the big bands and the trumpets. And it was just incredible to live. I'm telling you, it was like stepping back in a time zone where you step one way to your right and you're back in 1930 and 40. And when you leave Cuba and you go back to Cayman, it was a 45-minute flight. You're back in, 2003 again. But when you take that flight, you go back into Cuba. There were so many beautiful things about the culture. And it took my mind away from what law enforcement is tracking me. And will I get the death penalty? And then the reality hits you. And those are the days when I may get back to my house that I'm living in. And I'm go to the house, and Javier is one of the people that stayed at the house, and his sister was close with me. Once I get there, he had a sister that was there, and we'd go out a lot together. And Javier would, talk to me about Castro, which he wasn't a big fan of, but they were a political family, so he had to watch how we talked, and we would talk, and that's when it would hit me again, because he would talk to me more about how he could keep me in Cuba legally. For me to buy a property there at that time was $250,000, and he thought he could get me citizenship where they couldn't get me out of Cuba. And he used to discuss that with me, and at the same time we would watch movies. He'd buy the old CDs, and he had a player, and we'd watch movies, and he would have the writing in English, and in Spanish, and he'd have the movie in English, so he could watch it with me. And the family would sit downstairs with me, the mom, and he had a couple other people in the house, housekeepers, and they would cook for us and clean for us and take care of us, and give them, almost nothing, because they made like $20 a week for the people, a month for the people who don't know. So if you give them $20 for the week, they were ecstatic. And it was just an incredible experience when I was walking in those streets and when I came back at home. And you almost get so complacent that you want to believe that everything's okay and here's my life now. And you want to block out as much as you can. But at night, when you put your head on the pillow and you would hear any noises, you're thinking, are they coming for me? The way the Gestapo pulled over the train in Paris. Would they send? What kind of team would they send there? And your mind's paranoid, so it's running wild. And then when you're talking to people, whoever I'm in contact with, my father or some of my family members here and there, and they would try to convince me everything's all right. And you want to believe that, because you don't want to believe that you may be facing the death penalty if they catch you, or you may be facing life that you're never going to get out. Not may, you're facing life. But the idea is, how much do they have on you? And as that information's trickling in, they have more and more, because too many high-ranking made guys from our family and other families are cooperating. And as you get that information, you try not to think about it, because you're not going to sleep at night. Your mind's just constantly moving 100 miles an hour on catch me. When? How? What's my next chess move? Am I getting too comfortable here? Am I going from this country? Where's my next move? I can't stay here on a constant basis. It's not a good idea. And where's my next move? And as I'm doing that, I'm also getting involved in relationships, like with the girl Kenya. And Kenya becomes very close to me. It's the girl I'm dating in Cuba at the time. Beautiful, long black hair down to the lower of her back, thin, model, gorgeous, 5'7". If she was any other country, she would have been a supermodel, I believe, somewhere else. She was just that pretty and sweet, educated. And you start saying you don't want to get these attachments because you know you got to go. And you're not discussing, especially at the beginning, she knew nothing about me having problems. And you're slowly, and you're alone. So you're leaning more on her than you want to, but that loneliness, and there's no TV for the most part. We've got movie night here and there, and Javier's busy himself. He's working and he's out, and he's got his own, uh, personal life with his girl, and the family has theirs. So, we'd be downstairs and we'd have, like most families, you come down and everybody's hanging out. But I didn't want to intrude on them too much, but they'd always offer, come eat dinner with them, come down, and I wouldn't go always because you don't want to intrude. At the same time, they're starting to realize something's wrong. What's going on. But they were very private people. They didn't ask a lot. And then as they're learning more and more, they were very sympathetic to me. And they wanted to help me politically. And they just they wanted to be careful. They didn't say it to the wrong person that they couldn't trust. And they handcuffed me and put me in a prison there until they figured out what they wanted to do with me. Although the relationship, again, wasn't good with the United States, didn't mean they wanted me wandering around their country. A guy that's being looked for several murders, drug dealing around the world, isn't something that they want in Cuba either. And the jails in Cuba were horrific. They were as bad as the ones I end up with in Brazil years later. So you're trying to keep a clear head at the same time, trying to maintain some sort of normalcy in your everyday life. Because when you go into these parks and you're seeing these kids and you're seeing them playing with their families, and the culture is incredible. And I started, and eventually I buy, I leave the country and I go to Cayman Islands and I buy uh, a camcorder, and I'm going to different cathedrals, not just in Cuba, everywhere, and I'm taping the different cathedrals, beautiful cathedrals in different countries. I had, I don't know, probably 50 or 60 tapes that I end up sending home to my mom and dad. And when my dad gets sick and he has a stroke, we don't know what he did with all these tapes. I had, Notre Dame before it got burnt down. I had a million of them. And I don't know if we threw them out. We can't find them. But it was incredible to go into these cathedrals. And I learned to have more faith in Cuba, especially, where I was praying more and talking about to myself, to God, about where my future holds, and praying for forgiveness, talking about trying to change my life. And it was a big effort over the years to talk yourself into being a different person, because naturally now something's embedded in you, besides anger, besides violence, besides, when you're trying to tell people or you're talking to people, you can't tell them exactly what's going on in your life. So there's really nobody you can open up fully, even when you do talk, like I did to Javier and his mom and his sister. It's just not the same. You're not being specific about what you're being trailed for. You told me I was accused of certain things, but you're not really discussing it fully either, because you're worried about details in case there is the day where I get indicted and locked up. And I didn't understand the international laws either. What could be said by these people to law enforcement, and especially in a country like Cuba, if they weren't happy of me being there and I got locked up there? What would they do to these people if they knew things about me and they're hiding me? So you start understanding. You watch these movies with the Nazis when they were killing the Jews, and people risk their lives. There's a great movie that just came out with Anthony Hopkins called Life, where he's saving children's lives in Czech Republic, in Prague. And he saved like 600 or 700 kids' lives and generations of families because of him, 6,000 or 7,000. It's an incredible story. But you start understanding what the risk of the people that were hiding them were taking, or the people that were helping them. And I believe the guy's name was Nick Winston, that saved so many kids. But I started understanding these people are not only helping me, they're risking their own lives because of consequences of helping a guy that is being sought after internationally for some bad crimes, and murders and shootings and robberies and drug dealing, and not just in one area, but several states out of the country. I wasn't sure what kind of information they had. I just knew that more mob guys, captains, bosses, underbosses, concierges, maid guys were talking and giving me up. And as those days are going by, uh, the anxiety of long-term anxiety is, takes a toll on you. Yeah, I mean, you don't sleep. You take basically cat naps day and night, 3 hours, 4 hours. You're back up. You go back, lay down later on for an hour, and you're trying to, be as normal as possible. I'd go sightseeing. I would take Kenya. She would show me they had some amazing waterfalls, hot water falls in the woods of in the mountains of Cuba, and she would take me to some of these hot springs, and we'd go swimming, and which I wasn't a great swimmer, but we'd go swimming, and it was beautiful. It was romantic. We'd take a picnic bag. We took another couple with us twice that had a small boat. We went on the boat, and I'm trying to enjoy life, make it as much as normal as possible, but at the same time, I'm wondering where's Interpol stand with me now? Especially, my mind keeps going back to what happened to me coming home from Amsterdam to France when Interpol jumped the arrest warrant too soon and played their cards. So I knew at this point, the way they stopped the train with that many agents, Interpol agents, that obviously it's very serious, and they must have a ton of information on me and evidence to trail me like that for days at a time in Paris, to follow me to Amsterdam, to trail me there, to stop a train with, how many guys and women they had on that train, and the expense. And you start realizing I'm John Alite, uh, against the United States of America and Interpol International. Is you're realizing, oh my God, how much time do I got left? And then you're also thinking, will they just shoot, or are they gonna try to arrest me? And the way that agent, that and Gestapo was the name of them, in which I thought that was just the movies, was shaking with that pistol on my head, that 9mm, and sweating. Even if it's not intentional, they might shoot me because they just, who knows what they're reading and exaggerating, and they're scared themselves and they want to go home to their families. That trigger, you touch it a little too much, it's a head trigger. They'll kill you accidentally or on purpose. It depends on who's chasing you, following, and how bad they want to shoot. Do they want to shoot you? Are they looking to be a hero, saying that I pulled on them and that I was going to shoot them? You don't know. I mean, but I do know one thing. You have a mixture of emotions while you're running. And you're thinking about your family, you're thinking about your kids, you're thinking about all the money that is going to your investigators before you're even indicted, your lawyers you're hiring for extradition law, to money for your family, and where you're going to stand, how your kids are going to survive without you if you don't make this money, what's happening. You got so many emotions going through your head, and you're planning each day, okay, now where do I go from here? How much money do I leave in Cuba? How much do I take with me? How long do I stay in Cuba? And you can't get comfortable because you start enjoying and feeling comfortable in a location because you have a girlfriend that helps, you can lean on, you're laying in bed next to, uh, you're being served like a king because of the situation and the mansion I'm living in. You couldn't get much of a better situation. The country is beautiful. I'm sightseeing and I'm trying to live a normal life. I'm working out every day. I used to go run 5-6 miles a day. And then I'd go to the gym. I'd go to the park and do pull-ups because they had a park with the monkey bars. And I'd go on those monkey bars and work out. I'd go see my friend George. And him and Gaston at night, George more in the daytime. And I go work out with him. Leonardo DePena, I used to go see him, go to the gym and box. So I'm trying to keep routines at the same time. Some time goes by. And I'm also waiting for somebody to kick a door in, or when I'm being followed or thinking I'm being followed because you're paranoid. Exactly what happened in Paris. When I see a face, I start thinking they're following me. So your mind's playing a million tricks on you. And as I'm walking down the block, and it was a rainy night, it's pouring out. And they got some bad storms, some tropical storms. Trees are falling, and there's a guy following me. But maybe he was just walking in the same direction as me. And as soon as I turned the corner, I started running. And I'm like, is this guy going to run after me? And I ran 2 or 3 blocks. I was a good runner because I was always running long distance. And turned a couple blocks. I was soaking wet from the tropical storm. I didn't see him anymore. And that was it. I stopped. And I tried to make my way back to the house. Next week, come check me out. I'll be back with the next edition of Catch Me on the Run. And we'll follow through next week. And I'll give you more history of what happened. Hit the subscribe button, hit the click button, follow me, and follow my Instagram, John Alite on Instagram, and ask questions, likes, Facebook. Thank you, everybody. Have a great week.